Well, future me, who is currently in the middle of editing the Middle of Shadow of Mordor video for the YouTube channel, you better start getting to work on that Middle of Shadow of War video, because you had just finished Middle of Shadow of War, and now you have this to start reviewing once you are done with that Middle of Shadow of Mordor game. So, you better get right on that, mister. Alright, let's talk about Shadow of War. So with the success of Shadow of Mordor, Warner Brothers and Monolith Productions both went to work into making a sequel to the Shadow of Mordor series. And with critics and fans both enjoying the world of Mordor, Monolith Productions knew that they had to bring their A game to this next game, improving on the Nemesis system and the gameplay while also continuing from the story of Shadow of Mordor. Monolith knew that this game was going to be pretty hyped, and thus the work for Shadow of War began. As the team at Monolith Productions were working on Shadow of War, the team wanted to expand from just exploring Mordor and set their goals on newer regions for the players to explore. Monolith would take inspiration from landscapes like Washington, Alaska, and Iceland to build a world that would closely resemble Middle-earth and make players feel like they were in the world. While part of the team was expanding the world of Middle-earth, the Nemesis system would receive some new additions to how orcs would act as the game went on. I'll cover more of the Nemesis system again when I get to the gameplay, but these changes would be a big focus in the making of Shadow of War. After a few years of development, the game would be set for release in August of 2017 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC, but moved back 2 months later and instead being released on October 10th of 2017, with Warner Brothers stating that they wanted to make sure the game meets, quote, the highest quality experience for players. Oh, Warner Brothers, I'm sure that's the reason why you guys held back on this game. Especially when loot boxes were starting to make their rounds at this time. Hey, didn't you say the game was made by Monolith Studios last video? Well, yes, I did say Monolith Studios last video, but I actually meant to say Monolith Productions. You see, Monolith Studios are the guys that make Xenoblade for Nintendo, and Monolith Productions are the guys that are owned by Warner Brothers, and the ones making the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games. So for everybody who saw that in my last video and caught that, I'm sorry for the misinformation. It's actually Monolith Productions and not Studio. Who said that anyway? Anyways, let's cover the release. Even with the game's delay into October, Shadow of War would sell over an estimated 911,000 copies according to VG charts. However, this wouldn't save WB from the backlash of critics and gamers, talking about the microtransactions and loot boxes added to the game. Critics and gamers were having a blast with the game's new mechanics that had improved from Mordor and the ambitious scope this game had. But as the game went on, the game's story was feeling like it wasn't hitting the mark, or it would be too difficult to continue the game because of how orcs were ranked in this game. Oh, here we go. So the way Warner Brothers had planned for loot boxes in Shadow of War is interesting. The game would have you purchase orcs with higher levels and rarities to add to your army in the game. You may be wondering why that is. Well, for the reason for it was because the rarity of regular orcs and higher level orcs was so low that it would take you forever to find orcs strong enough to add to your armies or defenses, all while trying to push the player to buy stronger orcs with microtransactions. And let it be said, you need a good army in this game in order to beat the story. Needless to say, this impacted the review scores of the game. Yes, there were some things that were added into this game that had improved from Shadow of Mordor, but the fact that loot boxes were a problem, and not only that, but the story is not as interesting to follow as Shadow of Mordor's was, this led the game to be kind of mixed between critics and gamers. However, jumping a few years into the future and into the present time, the game would receive DLCs that would improve on the story while also, wait for it, remove loot boxes and fix the rarity of orcs and items. Hallelujah! I just needed to get that off my chest. With these new add-ons into the game, does this game deserve your time? Is it any better than it was at release? And more importantly, is the Bright Lord searching for new followers? Well, let's find out. Let's go ahead and cover Middle-earth: Shadow of War and talk about its story. Before we start talking about the story, I will be putting a timestamp for you guys to skip the story if you guys want to avoid any spoilers and want to run into this game for yourselves. I will either be putting a timestamp on the screen or I will be chaptering it like how I did last video. I'll give you guys about 5 seconds. And while we wait, can I just tell you guys how great the Bright Lord is and how he's got really good benefits, better than the Dark Lords? Let me just start telling you... Wait, what? We're running out of time. Maybe next time. The story starts off from where we left off from Shadow of Mordor. Talion and Celebrimbor have traveled to Mount Doom to forge a new Ring of Power in order to defeat Sauron. However, after creating the new ring, Celebrimbor is stolen from Talion's body and held captive by this new spider lady by the name of Shelob. By the way, did I mention she's a spider? Whew! Arachnophobia would be hitting high levels today. Shelob makes a deal to give Celebrimbor back if Talion gives her the new ring. Mainly to give the player a reason why they can't dominate orcs early. Don't you do it! Take your prize. Ah! With Celebrimbor joining with Talion again, Shelob points to a place called Minas Ithil in search for an item called the Plantier, a powerful item that can show a person's wishes. Talion then heads to Minas Ithil to see that it is currently being under siege by orcs. Talion decides to help save Minas Ithil even though Celebrimbor believes the city is doomed to fall in the search for the Plantier instead. Talion believes that by defending the city, the Plantier will be found, and after meeting a few Gondorians and fending off swarms of orcs, Talion finds that General Casimir, the one who's leading the defense of Minas Ithil, is a spy for Sauron. Before he can be stopped, Casimir opens the way for orcs to breach into the city, causing the city to be taken over. With the city lost, the Plantier, which the general had the whole time, is given to a wraith in order to save his daughter Idril. The wraith known as the Witch King then kills the general and almost defeats Talion, but is saved by an elf known as Ilithel. Ilithel? Elbloodlail? Huh? She's been sent by Galadriel, a royal elf who doesn't add anything to the story besides to say, "You must stop Sauron and this guy will help you do it." After being saved, Talion then rushes to go to save Shelob, who is being attacked by orcs. Talion is able to save the creepy spider lady, and in return is given back the ring Talion gave her at the beginning of the game. And just after I killed an orc I actually liked and wanted in my army.
One like me, it prances and dances and sings with glee. Wherever there's strife, the singer is there. He slaughters and slays with such merry flair. I sing this song with all my breath. Take heed, for this interlude ends with your death.
After getting the ring back, Talion starts to build an army once again, all while taking down forts all around Middle-earth in service of the Bright Lord. By the way, the Bright Lord is still looking for more followers, so come join the Bright Lord today. Anyways, with enough time, Talion is able to gather enough orcs to lead an assault on Sauron and his forces. He then runs into the Witch King once again, and after clashing swords, the Witch King is defeated. Before Talion gives him the final blow, he finds out that the Witch King is Isildur, and after seeing his memories as to how he was corrupted by the Ring of Power, Talion instead releases Isildur's spirit instead of dominating him. Celebrimbor isn't happy about Talion's choice to release Isildur, and it's at this time that Talion realizes that Celebrimbor wants to replace Sauron by dominating him instead of destroying him. Talion refuses to partake in Celebrimbor's plan. However, because Talion doesn't want to continue, Celebrimbor decides to merge with Elf Lady and take the Ring of Power, leaving Talion to die. Before Talion could die, Shelob shows up and tells him to continue the fight and keep the forces of Mordor at bay. Talion fights to grab Isildur's ring and leads an army to take back Minas Ithil, now known as Minas Morgul, all while Celebrimbor and Crazy Elf Lady take on Sauron. After taking back Minas Morgul, Talion uses the Palantir to see how the fight is going against Sauron, and it goes horribly wrong. After fighting Sauron in an actual boss fight with no QTEs, Sauron cuts off Elf Lady's fingers, giving Sauron the ability to merge with Celebrimbor. After the two merge, the two remain trapped in Sauron's tower as the Flaming Eye, and Talion then continues to defend against Sauron's forces until decades later, which honestly doesn't feel like decades since nothing really changes in the game. After doing a couple of things, Talion succumbs to Isildur's corruption and joins Sauron's forces. This made me mad. After everything we were doing after playing the game for over 60 hours, we decided to join forces with Sauron? Screw that. I would have liked to see Talion at least try to fight Sauron and fail miserably. Whatever, I guess. Talion dies after the events of Lord of the Rings and goes towards the light. The end. God, the story was alright, but the ending of this game just really sucked. Doubly so for anybody who had to play this game at its release time, with the microtransactions being a constant problem, or at least being forced down your throat, telling you that you should definitely buy these to make the game easier. And if not, the game is just so much of a grind for this true ending. Makes this ending just lackluster and not worth the time that you put in for it. Now, there are DLCs that improve on this game's ending, and not only that, give you some more information about a character's background. I didn't personally get to experience these because for my copy, which was on GOG.com, I got this from a friend, and for me to experience the DLCs, I would have had to buy the $60 version, Digital Deluxe on GOG.com, because they don't have a separate DLC side. But if you guys want to experience the DLC for yourselves and see if the game can have a better ending than what you're giving, then go for it. But if not, understandable, because this just kind of leaves you empty. And for anybody who has not played the DLCs, this is just how the game ends. Thankfully, the game doesn't have microtransactions anymore, and instead has improved on the Nemesis system and its combat system, which we should start covering here. Let's go ahead and talk about the gameplay. Unlike the 3 different ways you could upgrade Talion in Shadow of Mordor, this game instead has a skill chart that you can use skill points to unlock new abilities. What I also like about this is that you can use the skill points to further increase a skill's ability. You want to make your orcs follow you instead of dying? You can use a skill point and you can have minions help you in battle. Want to dominate orcs for more health instead of having them fight by your side? You can do that. You can't stack their abilities, but you are able to switch out abilities in case you want to switch things up, or use different abilities on different orc captains. Another unique thing this game adds is loot. You see, every time you finish a mission or kill off an orc, you're rewarded with either currency, gems, or weapons and armor. The gems in this game can give you different buffs to your character depending on what color you put in your item slot. You can also craft stronger gems if you have 3 of the same color and rarity, increasing their capabilities. The weapons and armor are amazing to collect in this game. You can get weapons that can increase how much health you can get back from a kill, how many elf shots you can replenish. Heck, you can get a bow that can make orcs' heads explode or stun them. God, I loved this bow. Once I got this bow, I never used another one again. And depending on what item you got, you can further increase items to make them higher level and give them additional perks. All this makes for fun and unique builds that you can have for your adventures. Now, let's cover the changes in the Nemesis system to this game, and before I cover this, I've had friends who have played this game as soon as the game came out, and would tell me how bad the system was forced to make you pay for microtransactions. But I can happily say that in my experience, the system runs amazingly. The only real complaint that I have is the endgame that I mentioned a while ago, just being a grindy fest for orcs. But I am glad that this isn't as bad as it was. Anyways, the changes in the Nemesis system helped give more orcs more character. Like the last game, you can have different kinds of orcs, but in this game, they've added new classes like the Assassins and the Tricksters, to name a few. These classes were awesome to fight when they showed up. You could be in the middle of a quest or preparing to go to the next area, then you could be ambushed by an orc assassin who's been after you, and you'll have to deal with them. Tricksters are interesting as well in the sense that they can vanish away from your attacks and you'll have to find ways to take them out. All orcs have strengths and weaknesses like the last game, but I feel like it's more important than ever to keep an eye on an orc's strengths and weaknesses. If you're not careful, you might run into an orc that has a no chance ability, and when you get downed, you can be killed immediately. Or you can run into an orc that you want to add to your army, but has an iron will that makes him immune to your dominate ability.
I guess some orcs like to follow the Dark Lord's teachings to a T. But another add-on that's added to this game is the fact that you can claim fortresses for your own once you get enough power from your orc army. If you have enough orcs on your side and enough power, you can try to siege a fort in every region in Shadow of War and claim it for yourself. Once you do that, you can promote an orc to become a warlord for your fortress and be defending against orcs from Sauron's side, or to be defending against other players.
Yep, this game has an online mode that you can play and show off your orcs in. I never got to experience it in my playthrough, but from what I've seen, you can take down other players' forts to gain better loot, and other players can try to take your fort. It won't impact the story, and from what I know, your orcs won't be killed by other players if they are beaten. You can also have your orcs go in a one-on-one match against other players' orcs and see which one wins. It's kind of like watching wrestling, and it's pretty fun to watch your orcs beat another orc.
With the loot boxes gone and the system's drop rate being fixed, this game feels like a proper successor to Shadow of Mordor, at least when it comes to the gameplay side of things. Not only that, but you can find this game on sale on PCs and consoles for a pretty good price. So if you guys want to experience the base game for yourselves, wait for a price drop and you guys won't have to pay over $30 possibly. With that said, I would highly recommend this game for people who want to experience the Shadow of Mordor or Middle-earth series. If you haven't experienced Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, you can experience Shadow of War without having to worry about playing the first game a little bit if you want to understand the story somewhat. With that said, thank you guys so much for stopping by, and if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and sub to the channel if you guys haven't already to keep up with more videos that I post in the future. If you guys have played Shadow of War before and want to share some of your experiences, comment down below some of your stories. With that said, thank you guys again so much for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time with Resident Evil 4 Remake. Have a good one, everybody, and take care.